Good Monday morning. I got a message from Luis in Maine asking me a question recently. His question was this. He and his wife are expecting their third child any day. Probably by the time this shows, maybe they already have their third child, in which case, Luis, congratulations. Let me know how everyone's doing. But Luis's concern was this: how am I going to have enough love and time for my third child? Well, at the time I got the question, I didn't know. My first question to Luis was this: are they with the same mom? And is she your wife? And in his case, the answer to both was yes. But he's still concerned about it. And Luis, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I remember many times, and I gotta admit, for me it was frustration. As stepmom and I were raising our 5 kids, I remember thinking, how in the world did my mom ever do this? She raised 5 by herself, and we had each other, and I just felt like it never ended. It was just non-stop. And so here's my answer to you, Louise. First of all, on the love part, don't even worry about that. Every child comes bundled with a package of love. You don't have a certain amount of love that you have to spread between everyone you know. It grows. It comes with each one. You're gonna love that new child just like you love your other ones, and maybe even more. So I wouldn't worry about having the capacity to love or not having enough love to give. Now the second part of your question, how am I gonna have enough time? That's a real challenge. And here's the answer. You just have to get used to realizing that your life is not your own anymore. You're not gonna be able to do the things that you used to do whenever you wanted before you started having kids, and particularly after the third, because now you're outnumbered. Now you can't have just one for mom, one for dad. Now you got a third one there. Grandparents come in handy, by the way. And stepmom and I are expecting our third granddaughter any day now. We're waiting for a phone call. But, you know, if grandparents are in the equation, they can be a help too. But regardless, you're gonna be busy. You're not gonna be able to do everything you wanted to do. Here's a story. When I was messaging you back, Louise, I know I told you this, that make sure you give mom a break. One year for Christmas, my wife asked me, she said, the only thing I want for Christmas is a few hours in the house by myself every week. Because this was the time when our kids were small. We had 4, I don't think we'd had our 5th yet. We had 4 small kids in the house. She's busy taking them to school, from school, picking them up, all the stuff that goes with raising small kids. And she just wanted time by herself in the house. So that year for Christmas, I chose to give her a half a day at home by herself on Saturdays. So what I would do is I would take the kids on an outing every Saturday. And we would go to like a science center or a park or a fast food place that had a playland or whatever. Find different things that I could do with them where I took them and I took care of them for, you know, a half a day, 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on the activity and what we did. And make sure you're taking care of mom. Make sure she has what she needs to support her. I know that's not the answer to your question, but if mom is a stay-at-home mom, and I know that's more and more rare, but if your kids are fortunate to have that, then make sure you take care of mom first. And by the way, that's the best thing you can give your kids, is to love and take care of their mom. Now, the second thing, or the main point of that, is you are going to have to give up a lot of the things that you like to do or that you would do if you weren't dad of small kids right now. It takes time. The sooner you realize that and give in to that reality, the easier it's going to be for you to do that. Bedtimes were a tough time for me. I'd like to go to bed. I went to bed early before I got married and before we had kids. Stepmom is a little bit more of a night owl, so she likes to stay up late. Well, consequently, I didn't feel like I could go to bed until the kids were in bed, and it ended up being me most of the time putting the kids in bed or trying to put the kids in bed. And it was so frustrating because they don't want to go to bed. They want to stay up and play and do whatever until they crash of exhaustion. So the discipline of bedtime was a frustrating time for me. But I'd get them all in bed, tell them stories, and then as they kept coming down, I have to start threatening them. Which the point of the story is just this: that you're gonna be worn out, and you're not gonna be able to do all the things that you wanted to do. And as soon as you get used to that reality, just live in it, and maybe even choose to enjoy it a little bit if you can. Here's the last thing I'd want to leave you with. Louise, the fact that you're asking this question tells me that your kids are in a great position. Now, I know that's easy for me to say because you're going to be going through all the stuff that we went through for decades, literally. It gets easier as the kids get older because then, you know, you're not worrying about bedtime, you're not worrying about changing diapers or, you know, kid arguments all the time. You still have worries and you still have things you have to deal with, but it's not the busy minute to minute, hour to hour kind of supervision that you have to give when your kids are small. But you are already giving your kids the love and the best thing you can. Because you're asking this question, I know your kids are in a good position. So just let me congratulate you for doing that. Now, for all the rest of you, if you're not in an ideal family situation, and I understand there's a lot of that's where the fatherlessness comes from, that I and that many of you, most of you, have gone through or are going through. Just understand that do the best you can with the circumstances that you're in. If you've got kids, love them, take care of them, love their mom, take care of her to the best that you can, be the best dad that you can for whatever circumstances you're in, and always remember that you can still succeed even if your dad's not in your daily life, and you do have a dad that loves you. And I'll see you on the next video.